Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many of you joining us again from last week, and to have some new names and new faces that are joining us tonight. My name is Mara Braunfeld, and I am Hadar's Director of the Children and Families Division. And it's a great pleasure to be able to be here with all of you tonight. As I said to everyone last week, I know we all have very busy lives and so many different schedules that we are juggling, and children's bedtimes and other things like that. So we really appreciate people being here tonight and being present in whatever way you can to be able to join this learning. So as you know, this is part 2 of a 3-part series that's all focused on why, how, and what to learn with our children. And tonight we get to dig into the how. But before I introduce our incredible teachers for this evening, we want to do a quick poll again, like we did last week. It may seem familiar to some of you, just to get a sense of who's here, who's with us in community and learning tonight. So we want to ask you 2 questions tonight. One, what's the main role that brought you here tonight? You can choose multiple pieces, multiple answers if they apply to you. And 2, what age children do you particularly have in mind this evening? Because this will help us also be able to direct some of our learning and some of our conversation. So we'll give just another moment for people to participate. And great. So I'm going to share our results. And Allison and Orit, can you see the results as well?
I can.
Excellent. It's great to have parents and grandparents with us tonight, and some of us that have professional educator hats on as well, in addition to our parent and grandparent hats. And then also to be able to know that we have a nice range of ages of kids that we're thinking about and that we have in mind tonight. So that is so it's wonderful. So welcome again. We are going to invite everyone who feels comfortable throughout the evening to turn your camera on, whatever it may look like behind you, totally fine. But we would love to be able to have your participation in different ways tonight. So the chat is open. Feel free to use that to be able to comment, to ask questions, to react to things that you're hearing, and to chat with one another throughout all of this. And I'm going to introduce my incredible colleagues and our wonderful educators for this evening. Allison Cook and Orit Kent are the co-directors of Pedagogy of Partnership, and they have expertise in child development and education and years of experience creating Jewish learning experiences with adults and with children of all ages. And so in the short time that I have been at Hadar, I have been enriched in every conversation that I have had with them. And so I'm so excited for us to all learn together tonight. So Allison and Orit, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mara, and welcome everybody. It's great to see your faces and your names. We work with learners of all ages and educators to help bring Torah learning to life. And we're so lucky that as Jews, we have inherited a beautiful tradition of learning in relationship, often characterized by chavruta. And it's instructive for how we can learn with one another, and it's instructive for how we can think about learning between grown-ups and children. Learning with family can be as like just a special experience and different from what we might do elsewhere. I myself, just when I think back to my childhood memories, have memories of learning around the Shabbat table with my family. And I remember many things. I remember the smell of the food at the table. I remember the spill of the grape juice, which happened on a weekly basis. I remember the chumash open. And I remember the asking and discussing of many questions. And I also have memories of the thump, thump, thump of my brother hitting the basketball against the hoop in the corner as the conversation was happening. And he seemed like he was uninvolved, but every so often he'd make a comment to join the conversation. And finally, I have a memory of just one moment when I asked a question and there was like a hush at the table and my grandmother repeated it for everybody to consider. And in that moment, I just felt like I was really a part of this conversation. And this Torah was really mine, and had this sense of belonging. And we really know from our own experiences that learning with family leaves an imprint that just can be extremely powerful. So we're excited to think with you tonight about how to begin learning with your children or your grandchildren, or to continue learning with the children in your life, and to give you some tips and tricks for elevating the time we have together. And we're going to help you get ready, get set, and go. So by the end of tonight, you'll be able to walk away with a few things in your toolkit. You'll be able to walk away with some frameworks and kavanot for intentionally planning the learning, some ideas for how to get started, and also some ideas for what to say and what to do.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone. So in order to get ourselves oriented, we wanted to begin by sharing a framework that serves as a kind of compass. So whenever we embark on learning Torah with others, it's helpful to have a kind of compass to help us find our way, to keep us grounded, but at the same time, be able to open up the possibilities wide for spontaneity and creativity and connection with each other. So this framework is what we call the partnership learning triangle, or the chavruta triangle, which is instructive because it's the most intimate unit of learning with other people, when you have just two people and the Torah or the text or whatever it is that we're coming to learn together. So no matter how many people you might be thinking about learning with in your family, we still are going to just zoom in on what it means in this most intimate relational framework of two people and Torah. So you'll notice about this triangle that it's an equilateral triangle, and there are three corners, and the three corners represent three partners, two people and the Torah. And in this triangle, our two people are the parent, or the special grown-up, the grandparent, the child, and the Torah itself. So one thing to notice is that the third partner is not a person. The third partner is the Torah. So we want to think about, what does that mean? And also we want to think that the two people that we have there are also full partners in learning. So you may be already scratching your head or thinking about, what does this mean, or what are the implications of all of this? And we want to give us a chance to unpack it together a little bit. So let's look at this triangle, and I want to ask a couple questions and invite you just to unmute and answer, or also you can put some comments in the chat as well. So when you look at this framework, what do you think it suggests about the role of each partner? So what does it suggest about the role of the child in this learning encounter? And feel free to just unmute and just throw an idea out. Oh, we have like an equal sign here. Awesome.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The parent and the child are on equal standing here, but of course this wouldn't apply to you guys because you're professionals, but I'm not a professional. But the parent and the child are on equal when they're learning or facing God, which is typically what I'm thinking, that we actually don't come out of our child status when it comes to God, quote God. But the Torah, I actually am not a Jewish person, but I met the kid's father at a synagogue, and he worships Jewish, and I worship there now. But the Torah, I need to make a note. The notes here, is that the teachings of Moses?
Yeah, so we're talking about, thank you for your comment, by the way. We're talking about Torah. Often we mean the 5 books of Moses, but we also can think of it more expansively. to be sort of the wisdom of tradition or other parts of tradition. And I do want to highlight this idea that even though parents and children are, have different strengths and bring different things into the learning relationship and have different kinds and amounts of experience, this framework does indeed suggest that there's a kind of equality or balance, at least in this learning encounter. Daniel, thank you. So any of the three partners, including the child, might offer a question or make a claim. Daniel, would you be willing to say more about that?
Yeah, like one could imagine a learning moment or encounter where any of the three is given preference. The parent is teaching the child the Torah, or we're turning to the Torah to instruct us on what it is that we should do. Or like plenty of people just say to the kid, like, you drive the ship. You tell me what you think, you ask your questions. But I think the equality or triangle says like all three are involved, which gives each of them some independence and some authority. Great,
thank you. Beautiful. And does anyone else want to share any other idea about what do you think particularly children bring to this encounter that might be kind of like what sort of gifts do children in general bring to this in particular? Just to get some ideas thrown out there. And if not, I'm happy to throw some out.
So kids look at the world as if they're seeing it for the first time. Right? They bring this freshness and this sincerity that I feel like many of us have had kind of taken away from us, grown out of.
Beautiful. It's this like beginner's mind idea, right? And when we seeing Torah or what we're learning through their eyes then enables us to see things in a fresh way as well. And that is indeed one of the gifts that children bring to this learning. Thank you. Anything else we want to?
I would suggest that at least for some people who are in the grown-up role, there might be a certain level of intimidation in studying and educating with your kids. And children don't have that intimidation at all because they're so thirsty for knowledge, because they don't know to be intimidated. So it's a very different position to be in.
Amazing, thank you. But also often think about it as like kids have less baggage. Or if they have baggage, it's different baggage. We carry all kinds of stuff with us, and all kinds of feelings about expertise and other things that we might be bringing. And kids just don't, not that kind of baggage. So, and that kind of earnestness. Yeah, thank you. And what do you feel like, I just want to make sure that we address the Torah as a full partner. What is the Torah bringing? Just a couple of things, you just unmute and throw it out there, just so that we're all sharing some understandings.
Many people believe it's the word of God.
Yeah, so it is bringing, it might feel and be that we're bringing God into our learning through Torah. Absolutely.
It's dynamic and complex, just like a person.
Yes. And does anyone want to elaborate on that point? Like, how is it dynamic and complex?
Well, I think maybe this is a related point, that it kind of situates us in history and in our people, that this is the same text that we have been learning across the generations. And so I think that is what adds to the complexity of the experience, that it's something that's been learned over and over, but also that it situates us in that kind of long tradition.
Beautiful. It kind of it binds us together over generations. And then here in this triangle, even we have some generations that it's bringing together, right? It's that we are being connected through this Torah. And also, I just want to point out that it's like the Torah, through its complexity, essentially asks us questions. It's like begging us to interpret it. The Torah, with its ambiguities and its multi meanings and its ability to be interpreted, is what draws us in, and it's the way that we need Torah, and the Torah needs us in order to enact interpretation. So we have the Torah, we have the child, and then the question is, what is it that we as parents or grandparents bring to this encounter? And what I want to ask more specifically is, in order to help as the parent or the grown-up in this triangle, what are the qualities that we might need to bring into this learning in order to bring a kind of balanced and full triangle to life? Like, what qualities do we need to bring in with us?
I see the Torah in some ways as being the like the steadfast, unwavering component, and the child being to some extent the opposite of that, without just in a very innocent way wavering. And I feel like as the parent, and this is where I feel a lot of pressure on me. I feel as the parent, I feel a responsibility of somewhat being this might not be the best word, but like a mediator between the two, or the bind between those two polar parts. I know that doesn't fit quite into a triangle picture, that description, but it is what I feel. It is the pressure that I feel on me in this triad. Yeah, really well said. I wonder if other people here feel that same way, because you are the grown-up in this triangle. And I think that what we have here is this opportunity to recognize that, yes, it is true that we kind of take responsibility for kind of mediating a little bit, but also when we do that, we can also open ourselves to realize that, wow, look how the Torah is also mediating in some ways my relationship with my child, that it's a way of seeing my child in a new way, and how the child will then also mediate our personal relationship with Torah. As we were saying before, like children bring fresh questions or fresh eyes. That in turn affects the way that we connect with and have a relationship with Torah. So yes, I think you're absolutely right. Like, we carry some responsibility, but also there is a way in which we can enter into this with a kind of attitude or quality that will help bring the Torah and the child more fully into it, and reach a kind of balanced and full encounter. And I want to just share some of the attitudes that stem from this triangle that we could bring into our learning. So just if everyone can take a minute to look at these, and I'll read them in case they're hard to see. So these are what we call like partnership kavanot, or intentions. And we're wondering, like, what appeals to you? Like, what feels like a compelling intention that you might want to take into learning with the children in your life? So the first one says, I have something to learn and I have something to teach. So what does that mean for a parent to come in really set and thinking, I have something to learn from my kid and from this Torah, and also I have something to teach and something to offer. The second one is, my child has something to teach me, and I may need to listen carefully and support them to be a full partner in learning. The third intention that might compel us is this idea that the Torah or the text or the whatever we're learning has something to teach me, and I may need to listen to it carefully in order to learn. That's sort of adopting a kind of respect and also beginner's mind, even if we already bring in a lot of knowledge or a lot of judgment, or we have studied this thing a million times. And then finally, there's this intention of, through learning with my child, we may open possibilities for coming to greater understanding and appreciation of one another as well as Torah. So take a minute and put in the chat the letter of the kavanah or the intention that you most want to kind of take with you from tonight when you think about learning with your kids. And just put the letter of the kavanah in the chat, or you can even write your own. Is there anyone who just wants to share why they put what they put? Please just go ahead and unmute. I'm having trouble seeing names, actually. I'm sorry, or I would call on you.
I was actually typing it and then I just deleted it, but and I was going to actually try to say it from the last slide, but I'm finding a need to try to show relevance of these older stories. Like my son is 7, about to turn 8, and is just really struggling. We are a small minority, one of just a few handfuls of Jewish children in our public school system. And like, really, why is this relevant and important to him today? And how can we take the morals of these stories and sort of show how we're supposed to be better humans and better Jews? And so I think like asking him those questions, so that's something that I can teach how I have experienced it in my life, but then he can also show it's different than when I was a child for him as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And yeah, finding that connection and finding that relevance. And I think we're going to hold on to that as we continue the rest of tonight. So thank you for raising that, because I'm sure that's on a lot of people's minds.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
It's more about, there's a certain degree of like, when you've gone through some of these stories now, like 3, 4, 5, 6 times, because you don't really, there's long stretches of the Torah that are not particularly child friendly, but there's some that are very child friendly over and over again. I feel like when you get to a certain point and they sort of have the baseline knowledge, that's when you can really start, piecing things together and trying to, learn from each other or something like that. I mean, it's like, honestly, like a 4 or 5-year-old is not as intelligent for some of this as like a 9-year-old would be. And I don't know, like at what point you're supposed to start transitioning from more of like let's actually learn what's straight out the basics here, versus starting to tilt it towards, well, what do you think and stuff like that, and how is this relevant? I think that's the part that I struggle with most.
Oh, nice. So I'm hoping that we actually will give some direction on that as we move forward, of just a way to approach the text with your child that can sort of meet them where they are, but also open up possibilities. So here, let's keep moving, and then we can certainly return to some things if it feels like there's some things that are missing. We are going to, oops, I'm sorry. With your kavanah or intention in mind, we're getting ready to learn with our children. And we're gonna do some more getting ready. Orit?
Great, thank you. I just actually want to share one little story before we jump in further from learning with one of my kids when he was like 5 or 6. And again, this has to do with the beginner's mind. And he was able to, in this instance, look at some of the verses with me from the beginning of Genesis and the creation story, and asked a question that I, in all my life and all my many, many, many years of reading these sections of the Torah, I had never thought of, which was, we're told that light and darkness are created on the first day. Like, what happens to them? Right? Like what happens to those creations? Like, we're told later on that we've got the moon and the sun and all that, but like, what happens to, and in particular, he wanted to know, like, what happened to that darkness from the first day? So there just are these questions that our children are going to ask and wonder about that can open up worlds to us. And we're gonna kind of come back to that, because that is a real place to lean in with children of all ages. But before that, we want to set this table for inviting them into this learning. Because if we want this learning to be something special, then we can make it special by how we invite them and frame what we're going to be doing together. And so these are just a few little ideas for how to think about beginning that learning. Send an invitation in the mail. Everybody loves getting mail. And when we get mail, it signals something like important is happening. Or put a little present together for the learning that you're going to do that includes what you're going to learn and some other special items or anything else that will signal to your child, this is going to be a special moment. This is not sort of the ordinary. There's something out of the ordinary that we are doing here, and we're going to make sure it's special. And really, by setting the frame that way, that will have implications for how the learning unfolds together. So that just is a first beginning. Then once you have invited them into the learning, it's time to just think about sort of how you're setting things up. What time of day or when in the week is going to be the most conducive time to learn? Most conducive for your child, the most conducive for you. Like, for some people, doing a little learning before bedtime is the ideal time. That's kind of a quieter time, a more focused time. For other people, their children are exhausted by then, and the idea of actually digging into anything is just way too much. And being able to do it on a weekend at a Shabbat table might be a better idea. For some people, like, there isn't time. And like the most optimal time is driving home in the car. And that is another opportunity to actually do some learning. You can't be looking at something in the car, but there is an opportunity to engage in some learning. Or, if you just need to move or your child needs to move, there's learning that can happen on the walk. So like, when is the learning happening? Like, making a set time is a really important feature of setting this up. Connected to time is place. Like, what is the place that is going to signal a sense of comfort? So everyone can be comfortable in that learning space. And that's also not going to be so filled with distractions. Is there a quiet corner? Is there a way to make a special space for when we do this learning together? Like, we now get to go and sit with a special, in that special corner together with a special soft blanket. Is there a fort to be made, or a tent to be entered, or a tree house? And these are all things, and you can kind of keep thinking, but like, what is your place that is going to work for you and the child that you're learning with? And, if you're on Zoom, learning with a child, if it's a grandparent and a grandchild and they're on Zoom learning together, it's like, what are you going to do to decorate, to make things feel a little extra festive? What are the third question is, what are the materials that you're going to bring and have on hand? And these might be materials that you are going to use when you're learning together. Like, you might actually want to have some Legos to build some things that you're learning about, or to have some stuffed animals to act out things. But you might also just want some things on hand because kids love to move their hands, and sometimes just need something in their hands in order to enable them to focus. And then finally, is there going to be some food or drink that's involved? And what is going to be food that's going to be exciting for your child? And again, this is all in the mode of like, how are we cueing up their senses so that this is a special experience and a comfortable experience for everybody. I wanted you to just take a moment to think about these 4 elements: time, place, materials, food or drink, and choose one that you want to try to put into place. And if you can share it with a chat for others to learn from, to share your idea of like what you're going to try in terms of one of these elements. So when might you want to do this learning? Is there a special place? Bamba, that's great.
I actually wanted to have a Shabbat on the weekend, but the Shabbat, it begins on Friday afternoon. Is that correct?
Friday evening, yes.
And when is Shabbat over?
Saturday evening.
So that actually is a correct time frame if it was going to be on Saturday evening. Because they go to an educational program that's just starting at this. Well, we had a Tot Shabbat with Rabbi Ginsburg. I think I wrote her name, Judy Ginsburg. And so now we're going to, there's another term, not mitzvah, but where they're going to do some more education or to reinforce some cultural initiatives, which is going to begin on Sunday, which is going to be like a Sunday school class, sort of, you know, but at the synagogue at Temple B'nai Israel here in Monroe. But I have been to some of the Shabbats over at Temple B'nai Israel, and I rather enjoyed it. And there was reading materials, you know, and the candle lighting. And I didn't know what official requirements were, but I can't actually get to the Shabbat, which I kind of missed myself. I thought maybe I could have it on a Saturday evening.
I think the key is just what's going to work for you and your family. So if Saturday evening is the time, then that's a great time. Thank you for sharing that. And I see Daniel has Tuesday dinner for Torah study time. So it's really about like making sure you have a reserved time that everybody knows about and that it becomes part of the routine of your house. Like this is the time that we do it. You know, even if it's for 5 minutes, this is the time that we do it. And we have some Bisley in competition with Bamba for special foods that we can share out. I'm sure that there are many others. But all of these little details really do help create a learning environment that is conducive to us and our children engaging together. So one way to just, and many of these things that we've been talking about have to do with tapping into our senses and how we tap into the senses of our children. And like that is key for both creating the environment and for them really being able to get into this learning. And it's also key for their memory. Like we remember things through our various sensory elements. And as you're learning, one of the things that we consider is when we want to troubleshoot because something isn't working, is for us to consider like what of these different senses needs attention? Like, is there something that needs to feel better here? Is there something that needs to taste a little better? Do we need to adjust the sound that's happening? Like all of these inputs have an impact on our kids. And so this is both a guide for how do we set up the learning, but it's also a guide for how we troubleshoot the learning moving forward, because the sensory experience can make or break learning. You know, even what we smell, like who doesn't want to be in a space that smells like fresh baked cookies or clean, you know, calm air flowing through or you know, any number of things that make you say, ah, yes, I want to be here.
That's what I was thinking, that of course, when we think about Shabbat, we're thinking about bread, homemade bread.
That's amazing.
So that's an association, that's even kind of similar to a holiday, except for it can be experienced at a specific time every week,
Yes, so that fresh baked bread or challah smell or that chicken soup smell, I'm sure we all have associations that bring out, evoke warm memories for us. We can create that for our kids. And so once we've come in with our kavanah, we've come in with some idea about how to get set up, then all right, we're ready to go. So what do we do when we're with each other? And we wanted to just present you with a tried and true, simple learning routine. And here it is. Introduce some Torah. It could be with either the Chumash, a storybook, one verse, one pasuk, a picture, a song, some piece of Torah to be that third partner that you're bringing in. And then ask your child, what do you notice and what do you wonder? And then just take turns noticing and wondering and discussing together. And then really rinse and repeat. You can go back to the Torah, you can do it again. And these first two steps of our little learning routine here, it can take 5 minutes or it could take an hour, depending on the energy and attention of your child. And it can be, as we said, augmented with all kinds of materials and learning. And this is, I just want to point out that no matter what, you can always ask, what do you notice and what do you wonder? I think, Susan, you were talking about feeling a responsibility and, kind of heavy, like you were carrying some responsibility for how this is going to go. And I think also Megan too, talking about how do I make it relevant? So it's great if we are learned in the material that we are, bringing in with our kids, and we have a lot to teach. But it's also great if we are just going on a journey together, noticing and wondering together. We don't need to prepare all kinds of fascinating questions. We don't need to bring that to the table. We don't necessarily need to take that on unless that comes naturally to you or you want to do it. All you need to do is ask, what do you notice? And you will be off and running. And follow your kids' questions, follow their digressions. And then once you've been doing this, end your learning with an appreciation. Share appreciations for one another, share appreciations for Torah. And there you go, a 3-step routine, and you are on your way. And I just want to play for you a little clip it's a little audio of a mother learning with her daughter. And this is an excerpt from the forthcoming Hadar Children and Families podcast called Torah Time that is in the works, which we're so excited about. And here you get a sneak little preview of listening to Miriam Sima and her daughter Adira studying Torah, and listen for the first 2 steps of this learning routine. You can just hear what it might sound like. If I can get it to work.
And behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. So Adira, what do you notice about this pasuk?
That it's called Har Elohim. And how would Moshe know that was called Elohim? It's not like there's a sign there.
Nice. Oh, that's really interesting, right? Is the idea that it's the mountain of God. Is that something that Moshe knows already? That's a great question.
And if Moshe knows that, then why would he be surprised?
Then later when he's surprised to see this burning bush, why is he surprised? It was the mountain of God.
Yeah.
So I hope that you noticed in there that Miriam Sema read the verse, the part of the story, and said to her daughter, "What do you notice?" And Adira had this like amazing noticing there that Miriam Sema then was able to revoice, and they were off and running. And that is something that we all can do. We all can notice. We can all wonder, no matter how much we know about the Torah that we're studying. So here's a question, like what are some of the things your kids might be working on? So we just want to just stop here for like a little developmental check. Here we have some descriptors for what younger children are kind of working on and what older children are kind of working on when we learn together. That can help us think about how that learning routine might come to life in different ways. So just look at these, and maybe you recognize your own kids in some of these, and I just want to point out a couple things. So for younger kids, you know, they are just learning to express ideas in words. I mean, clearly we know this. They're working on actually phonetic articulation. This is why early childhood programs do show and tell kinds of things, because that is what they are working on. But I do want to just point out some things that you might recognize that for younger children, I would say like 4 years old, like to like 7-ish or whatever, they might have amazing ideas. They might point out like this incredible noticings or these incredible wonderings about what you're learning, but they're often really short-lived. And one of the things that adults can do is to help them hold on to those great ideas. And this happens all the time. I remember like having this wonderful learning conversation with a 5-year-old, and we were learning some like Abraham Torah story, and he pointed out this like amazing insight about the text, like amazing. He said, I was like, oh, this is, you know, this child has the wisdom of the ages. And I leaned in, I was like, oh my gosh, can you tell me more about that? This is so fantastic. And he looks at me very seriously and he says, have you ever seen a dinosaur? And this is so much like what it's like to be that age, right? It's like they have these incredible flashes of insight. They have all of these ideas. They say these questions, and then to us, they seem all over the place. But to them, they are just like living out their associations and their ideas. And it's just a wonderful opportunity just to kind of hold on to those and just go with our kids and delight in their musings. But we, as an adult, one of the roles that we have is we can hold on to those great ideas and those questions and help them return to them at a later time. For older children, we get into like under elaboration. Like we are also living in this age of text messaging and you know, and acronyms and all of these things. And it's just a cultural trend, even, not even just a developmental trend, to really under elaborate. And what we want to do is really help draw our kids out. And we also want to help them not be so self-conscious about thinking out loud and just trying ideas out. So these are all things that kids are maybe working on, and we can help them in order to have them show up fully and enjoy. And one way that we can do that is through a set of speech tools that in Pedagogy of Partnership, we call them speech prompts. But these tools are these tiny little amazing technologies that can really help us connect to Torah and to one another. So for example, this idea you heard in the podcast excerpt, Miriam Sema revoiced what her daughter said. So that the speech prompt C there, so are you saying, is to help re-articulate what your child is trying to say and help show that you are listening, and also help like to check for understanding. and also draw them out. Also, can you tell me more about that? Help them pull out from that under elaboration, and ask them to say more. Say, how did you even come up with that idea? We've already talked about noticing and wondering. I think all of these tools can do different things, and I would love everyone to take a look at them right now, and maybe put in the chat one prompt that you see here that you are thinking, yeah, I want to use that more when I am learning with my kid. If anyone can just, yeah, you can put either the letter in or you can write it in. So Daniel says, you love, where do you see that in the text? Exactly, because that really helps. It's the difference between interpreting and opinion. And of course, in Pedagogy of Partnership, we work with educators in schools, and that is a big thrust of our work, is helping refine those interpretive skills. And the idea of where do you see that in the text, it helps draw out your child, but it also helps draw out the text. It helps keep the text in the conversation. It's not just my opinion, but instead we need to ground this in the text. Yes, so seeing more mirroring with C, right, that mirroring back, so important. Does anyone else who put something in the chat here want to say why they chose what they chose? Anyone who put J want to say more about J?
I think there's value in children knowing that you can learn from them as much as they can learn from you. You know, very often they spend all day in school learning from an adult. Whether or not they have an opportunity to teach that adult, I don't know, I'm not there. But in a parental relationship or in a family grown up to family child, the opportunity that you can share in that knowledge and that they have something to contribute, I think can be very powerful.
Absolutely. Just imagine ending, it doesn't have to be at the end, it can happen all the way through our learning conversations, but to just make sure that you help just say out loud, it's like, wow, thank you. I never saw the text that way before. I'd never thought of that before. That's an amazing question. I learned this from you today. Thank you so much. And sometimes we can take turns saying what we learn from each other, and we can take turns saying what we appreciated about learning today and what we appreciated about the Torah today. Yes, raises the child's self-esteem and confidence. Yes, and the feeling of thrill when they teach a grown-up something. And also, here's the thing, kids love to feel mastery. So, you know, a well-earned appreciation for that goes a long way. Yes, is there another way of understanding that? Yes, and this is a wonderful tool, as you say, to help make sure we don't rush to judgment about what the text means, and to open up multiple possibilities. And by using this prompt, we are demonstrating and modeling for our kids that there are many ways to understand it, which is also a great tool if your kid is of the age of, I already learned this one before. I know this story. I've already learned this. And it's like, yes, you have. And our job today is to listen for something new in the text that we have never thought about before. That is our job today. Is there another way of understanding it? Exactly. Wonderful. So I, want to also encourage that you walk into your next learning encounter with your kids thinking about, okay, what is one of these prompts I'm going to try to use with my kid this time? And also think to yourself, which of these prompts do I want to teach my child to use? And empower your kids to learn through the use of these prompts. Say, today we're going to use, is there another way of understanding that? And we're going to just really dig into this in a new way today. Today, we are going to, tell each other where we see that idea in the text, so we can make sure we bring it back. So this is all these tools that we have that will create deeper connected learning. Okay. Oops, sorry. So what do we have coming to the end of our time here? We have a getting ready. What is the kavana or intention you can bring to your learning with that kind of energy to create a really special time for your kids, and ideas for inviting learners. Get set, ideas for when, where, and what we can do to learn with each other, and go. A flow for how to conduct our learning time, and actual practical tools for what we can say and do with them. And we hope that this Get Ready, Get Set, Go will help either launch you or energize you in the learning that you do with your kids. And we have a couple minutes for questions, if anyone would like to open any other questions. And I think, Mara, if you want to talk about what's coming next, we just want to thank everyone so much for coming and wish you a lot of wonderful learning with your kids.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Orit, for bringing all of this to all of us. And thank you to all of you for your incredible participation during such a late hour. It was really wonderful to feel sort of alive and in conversation with everyone and through the chat. So thank you for adding your ideas to all of this. Your children are very lucky to be learning with all of you. We would love to invite you and anyone else that you'd like to invite to join us next week, same Tuesday evening time of 8:30 Eastern, to join us for our final part of this 3-part series, where we're going to really lean in to the what of what we can start learning with our children, and we're going to look at Davash, Hadar's new Parsha magazine. Just by like quick show of hands or thumbs up, how many of your families are already receiving Davash, or should be soon in a batch receiving Davash? Excellent. So I will be joined by Rabbi Effie Unterman, our director of content at Hadar, and he and I are going to be able to explore with everyone really some practical tips and tools with Pedagogy of Partnership's guidance and help with a family learning guide, and we look forward to being able to be together and do some more learning next Tuesday evening. So with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and thank you again so much for joining us. Take care.
So, thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.